Welcome. Today we're going to be looking at soft pastel techniques, starting with blending up here in this corner. You can work with smaller pastels, you just need to snap them in half. And if they're a little dirty, which these ones are, they've been in the bag together with one another, you can just take a paper towel or some tissue and you can grab onto them, kind of twist and rub and pull and get all that extra chalk pastel off the outside. These are soft pastels because they're really soft, they're very chalky, they get all over your hands, so you may need to wash your hands while you're working on this a couple of times. Every time you touch something with chalk pastel on your hands, it's going to transfer that pastel right on over to other things, including your paper, your clothing, your face, etc. So keep an eye on that. Try and wash those off a little bit each time. So for blending our pastels, we're going to push firmly and add a nice solid color on here, and then I'm going to lighten up when I get towards the area I want to blend with another pastel. I'm going to use yellow and red for this one. And again, I'm going to push hard where I want it red, and a little lighter towards the center where I want to blend those two colors. And if I mix red and yellow, I'm going to get an orange color in the middle. I go back over with my yellow right in the middle and push really hard to fill in those extra gaps. And then you always want to start blending with your finger on the lightest area and then down into the darker, because if you start with the darker and you work up into the light, you might end up losing your lighter colors to that darker color. It's pretty strong. So again, make sure you're wiping off your finger. You're gonna have a lot of extra pastel dust. Don't blow it off your paper. It goes up in the air and in your lungs. You'll end up with rainbow colored boogers or snot when you blow your nose. You also don't necessarily want to wipe it off with your hands, because then it's just gonna smudge it. It's best to turn it and tap it on the edge and let it fall on the table, or kind of tap it into the trash can. The next one we're gonna do are a little bit of line scrumbling. So it's a lot of short little lines all together, a little bit like hatching, except you kind of start strong, and then as you lift up off the paper, it gets thinner and comes to a point. This is really good if you're doing grass or anything pointy and leaf-like in that manner. So I always start with my lighter colors, work into the mediums, and then the darker ones. This helps give it a little bit of depth and make it look like it's layered in with one another. It's also good for animal fur or hair, short hair, if you're doing something like that, right? Tap my paper off, get all the extras off before I move on. Now I'm right-handed, so moving left to right means I'm not smudging it with my hand. I'm trying to keep my hand up off the table, but if you're left-handed, you might want to start on the left-hand side of your worksheet and work over, on the right-hand side and work over to the left-hand side, so that you're not smudging on top of things. Now hatching and cross-hatching we've done earlier in the year. You can cross-hatch with the same color, or you can cross-hatch with two different colors and it kind of blends them together and gives you that red, orange, yellow look. Hatching again is just those short little lines that are dashed. You can keep it the same color. You can trade out colors as you're working through to add more color value and interest to things. So there's your hatching and your cross-hatching. Next one over here, we're going to do little short strokes on the side. So you want to turn it to the side of your soft pastel like this and lay it flat, and then you can push or pull. I'm pushing, so I'm keeping my hand at the bottom so my paper doesn't move, and you can choose to overlap these if you would like to. This works best on smaller papers. I'm going to wipe this out of my way. With smaller pieces of pastel, larger pieces of pastel for larger papers when you're working on this. You can also do it layered. So those ones were sort of side by side. This one's similar to the blend where you're going to overlap them in the middle, just like this. But I'm not going to go back and smooth it out too much. I'm going to go back in with that yellow, but I want to leave it just like this for that rough texture to really show through. Now over here we're going to work on that feathering. So similar to the lines that we did up above with the green and the yellow, feathering is a line that you draw out but much longer. So if you have long fur or long hair that you're trying to texture in, this is one way to do it, using similar color hues to one another. Kind of a sampler palette that I'm going to throw together in here with some oranges, burnt orange, bright orange, and maybe just a little bit of red to give you an idea of what that looks like for texture. Then I'm going to work down here where we can curve it. So again, flat on the side, and then you just kind of do like a bunch of little letter C's or backward letter C's, again, depending if you're right-handed or left-handed. These can overlap, or you can fill in the spaces in between. These are good for when you need things that look puffy or bunchy, kind of in this route. Another one we can do is pointillism. It feels kind of like when you're pedaling a bicycle, your fingers are kind of making that circular motion, and where it's tapping down on the paper is where you are going to have a mark. These tend to have a little bit of direction to them because they're not perfect circles, so keep an eye on that. If you're working with them, you might want to have them run more horizontal, vertical, diagonal, totally up to you. This takes a lot longer to do, especially if you're layering colors into one another. So you want to consider that when you're looking at the different ways that you can go through and do your drawing with these later on. This technique will take you a lot longer than some of those other techniques will, especially in the areas of adding value. And then here for the last one, you can draw. You want to find a sharper side or a point on your pastels. And then literally just like you can with a pencil or a crayon, you can go in here and you can draw nice solid hard lines. You can leave them that way, or you could go back over the top with your finger to kind of blur them out. So here's your sample technique. Great job, guys.